Hello, everyone. It is I, Terra Little, and thank you so much for joining me for February 365's Blackest Lit Book Club experience. Again, I'm Terra Little, author, educator, speaker. To learn more about me, visit my website at terralittle.com. And to learn more about February 365, go ahead and visit the February 365 website at february365.com. All right, so I've been away for a while. So glad you're deciding to join us for this episode of the Blackest Lit Book Club experience, which, by the way, is episode 4. We are discussing The Reformatory by Tananarive. This being episode 4 is going to conclude the novel. We're covering chapters 31 through 43, which brings us to the end of the novel. I'm so excited. I absolutely enjoyed this novel. I'm ready to talk about it. Again, thanks so much for joining me. Sorry for the long delay for those of you who do tune in. But I'm back. All right, and I'm ready to get into it. So let's get started, okay? Okay. Okay, we're back, and I have my note cards. I have my handy dandy Kindle in case I need to refer to that, refer to the novel. But I am ready to get into it, so I'm gonna use my note cards to keep me on task. So again, we were discussing chapters 32 through 43 of The Reformatory by Tananarive. 43 brings us to the end of the novel. So let's get into it. In chapters 32 through 43. Now, in this episode, I did not separate the events that I wanted to point out and discuss by chapter because I found that for this last chunk of the book, chapters 30 through 32 through 43, it, the chapters just kind of flowed to the point where I'd finish one chapter and I'd be halfway through the next before I realized that I had finished the other chapter. I'm turning the pages just that fast because it was very action packed, edge of your seat type of reaction that I had to this. So when I went to reflect on what I had read and make my notes, I found that it was just easier and more efficient for me to just write overall my summary or my thoughts about that chunk of the novel rather than try to break it up by chapter because again they kind of flowed so quickly one into the other that I would have been going over into other chapters drama anyway had I tried to split it up by chapter. So overall summary, chapters 32 through 43. All right, so I particularly noted um that at this point, and I think I mentioned it in the last episode, that Robbie, and Redbone had been recruited by Warden Haddock and Boone, the worker there who does Warden Haddock's dirty work. Dirty work. Anyway, he had been recruited and approved by the dynamic duo to hunt ghosts around the grounds of the school. So this affords him a measure of freedom. You know, he's not held to such strict standards. He's kind of like a campus celebrity now. He has been, certified. He's bona fide a haint catcher. His skill has been noted for doing this. And so this is what he does. He's allowed to have an assistant. So, of course, he picks Redbone. And so I noted in my notes that Robbie and Redbone are enjoying a little bit of freedom, even though they're in captivity. They're enjoying this newfound freedom of being able to kind of roam the grounds and not always have, someone or something breathing down their necks as they talk, and just kind of solidify their bond, but also figure out a way to get through daily life there at the reformatory. So they have these passes and they're now roaming the grounds, searching for ghosts so that Boone can then follow up and trap them in his jar of souls or whatever So that's Bobby's job. In exchange, we'll go a little easier on you, and maybe you might get out early or something or other Haddock was trying to dangle in front of him. Anyway, there comes an incident, a time that, Boone is unsatisfied with Robbie's performance. Robbie is unable to summon a particular ghost, or immediately he was not able to instantly, respond and get the ghost or the soul there so that Boone can trap them. Um, and he's punished because of that. And as we already know, if we've been reading the novel, if you've been reading, when we talk about punishments or consequences, these are not, things that anyone would, be welcoming or wanting to experience. So he receives a consequence or a punishment for not being able to summon a ghost or a soul that he had previously, maybe I think, promised that he would be able to get, or was pretty certain that he would be. Boone decides, oh, you playing with me. You trying to play games. So there's a consequence to be had for that. And the consequence, is that Redbone is snatched up and taken away. So rather than inflict the consequence directly onto Bobby, it's since you want to play, watch this. And so the consequences, inflicted upon the closest thing to Bobby at this circumstance, at this point in time, Redbone. So Redbone snatched up, taken away. And I was very, very saddened to note that at this point in the novel, this is the last time that Bobby ever sees Redbone again, which is tragic in and of itself, but we're not done. All right, so there's a previous chapter that's called The Fun House. And again, if you've been reading the novel, if you have read the novel, then you know what the Fun House is, or where it is, why it is, how it is. So now we're introduced to Boot Hill. I think I mentioned Boot Hill in a previous video, but we hadn't yet encountered Boot Hill yet. What is this Boot Hill? Where is it? What the hell goes on Boot Hill? Now in this point in the novel, we discover what Boot Hill is, where it is, how it functions, what goes down. And it's the reason. It's the place where Redbone is last seen, and it's the reason why he's last seen, or how he's last seen. So I'm not going to get into the particulars of that because I don't want to give away too many plot spoilers. But again, if you've read the novel, or you are reading the novel, if you know, you know. So Redbone is not ever seen. When Bobby realizes that Redbone has been removed from his life, and reflects on the fact that it's a consequence of whatever it is that he's done wrong, per Boone and Ward and Haddock, it seems to alter his mindset. To me, it feels like his mindset, something clicks, and he becomes stronger, more, I guess, wiser beyond his years, because we know that he's 12, but along with everything else that he's lost, his parents, in the ways that he's lost them, we've discussed that, his way of life, his freedom. At this point, he's suffered some gross indignities, some severe consequences here at this reformatory, things I'm sure that he never would have imagined in his wildest dreams would be his reality, a year ago. But the taking of Redbone, the removing of Redbone, and it feels like it's his fault. It seems to trigger something inside of him, and it wisens him up beyond his years. I feel like certainly beyond the 12 years, he becomes more knowing, more aware, and more strengthened in his resolve to, I guess, fight back, to reclaim some sort or some measure of his power. So back on the home front, Gloria is also experiencing consequences as a result of Bobby being unable to produce or perform as quickly or as fantastically as both Boone and Warden Haddock would like. So not only is Redbone snatched out of Bobby's life, but now the heat is being turned up on Gloria in civilian life. We know that she had suffered some forms of harassment as a result of her father's activities. Um, and of course, what happened to Bobby. So she's gone through some things in this whole debacle as well. But now that Bobby is being more severely punished and the stakes are higher, the heat gets turned up on her as well, even though she's not being held prisoner at the reformatory. She has not committed any crimes, but she begins to be treated as if she has. So let's talk about that a little bit more. Um, Part of her punishment includes, we know that previously the home that Robert Stevens Sr. had been building for his wife and his children, a new home, had been burned down in retaliation against him. He's in Chicago or out of town for his safety reasons. They still had, or there was still a home for Gloria and Robert, even though they had been residing with Miss Lottie for safety reasons, but they still had the old homestead, which was, kind of run down, and the new home would have been wonderful had it not been burned down and plans been able to go forward with it. But it was burned down, and now that the heat is turned up on Gloria, their old homestead is burned down. So there goes, family heirlooms, photos, priceless artifacts and things that I'm sure that Gloria would, and Steve and Robbie as well, would have liked to hold on to, especially given the fact that they've already lost their mom and we don't exactly know what's going to happen with the fate of their father. So they've lost some valuable things that money cannot replace with the burning down of the home. So that's another punishment or consequence that they are both made to suffer. But then again, same thing with Gloria, just like I talked about Bobby seemingly being galvanized into a more forceful, more intentional action. Gloria is as well. So at this point, both Gloria and Robert seem to come into a more clear, organic understanding of who their father is. I mean, there had been some previous, resentment, I think. Like, I understand what you did, but dang, did you really have to do it? Like, that type of thing, where the kids were concerned toward their father. But I think with everything that's been unfolding, with the injustices perpetrated against Robbie Jr., as well as Gloria, and then more information unfolding about the events where their father was concerned. I mean, not that there was ever any question about his innocence, but just to find out that more people are aware of what really happened and how everything's been swept under the rug and this man has been victimized for no reason, really. Speaking of the father, but how it's trickled down to his children as well in, really cruel ways. And that seems to kind of crystallize in their heads. And I think they start to, at this point, they've always loved their father. They've always, admired him. But at this point, they really start to see him, who he is, what he stands for. And they're less resentful, and even their admiration increases. And they begin to, I think, both, as much as either of them can understand it at their ages, they both begin to understand that all that is needed for evil to thrive is for good men to do nothing. That's a quote. I don't know who said it. I did not, claiming no rights to it. But it's right for this moment, because they both, it really crystallizes for both Robbie and Gloria in that moment that their father had been standing up for what was right. And I think they both come to the understanding that if given similar circumstances, they might well have done the same thing, like look what we're doing now. And it's so out of character, so new for both of them, that they both have discovered this new inner strength that they have. And we probably got this from Dad. All right, Dad, kind of feeling that I got. Not to make light of anything, because this is not, a woohoo kind of moment, but their admiration for their father and everything that he had done, and his reasonings for having to leave town, it all kind of crystallizes even more. And they're seeming to like walk a mile in his shoes, and finding that warrior spirit that their dad has kind of, also lives, not kind of, but it also lives within them as well. So that becomes more fuel for the events to come as we move through the novel. All right. And again, or not again, because I've not said it, but let me say it now. I apologize for periodically looking down. I'm checking my notes. So sorry about that. All right. So I'll talk about that. All right. So previous section of the book, I think in episode 3, Gloria and Miss Lottie and Gloria's sons or relatives or whatever huddled together and came up with a plan to break Robbie out of the reformatory. Kind of a dicey plan. Got to plan it just right for who's going to do what, when, where, how. Make sure you're here at this point by this time. A second later, everything's ruined. So combining that with Robbie's new role at the reformatory, because even though Redbone is snatched out of his life so cruelly, and Gloria's being leaned on in various ways in the community, almost made to feel like a fugitive, kind of running from the law. They want to detain her. They want to question her. Where's your father? Something. It's the heat is really turning up. So there was a plan already in place, but now it's even more daring because the scrutiny is intensified. They're already suspecting us of something that we were not even doing. So things are made even more difficult. If this escape plan is going to work, it's going to be twice as hard to pull off, because of all these other mitigating factors that are now in play to disrupt the plan. So one wrong move, one misstep, and something could go horribly wrong. And at this point, lives literally hang in the balance. So make sure I didn't leave it. Okay. All right. So there's a plot twist to the plan, though. There's a plot twist. You knew there had to be one. It wouldn't be Tananarive if there wasn't some jaw-dropping moment. You're just kind of like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And the, oh my God, what do we want to do? The plot twist is it's not going to go off as smoothly as he once thought. Robbie thought, okay, I got to do A, then I got to do B, then I got to do C. Hadn't been counting on encountering Redbone as a ghost, because at this point, Redbone is no longer among the living, and he is a ghost, and he is able to visit Robbie and communicate. We know that Blue, which has been suspect to me all along, but we know that he is also on the other side and able to communicate with Robbie. And there's a hitch in the plan. This plan that Gloria and Robert, yeah, have hatched, have come up with, Miss Lottie as well, this plan that they've devised. There's going to be some hiccups in it because now Robbie is not only working to free himself, but he's also been given this monumental task of working at the same time to free all of the trapped souls there at the Reformatory, all of the spilled blood in the soil, all of these ghosts that Boone and Warden Haddock have been so ferociously attempting to trap. Robbie has been given the task of setting them free. And that is something that he had not been counting on, and something that makes this whole ordeal even more difficult. So yeah. But at no time is he alone, because even as he's given the task of liberating these trapped, tortured souls, he does have the assistance of Redbone and Blue in their various roles as ghosts. There's, again, even more steps that have to be taken, things that need to be done at certain times. Make sure you're here. And so it's like it really, as I read chapters 32 through 43, I was literally on the edge of my seat. And I found that, I know I said earlier that one chapter flowed into the other, and I would be halfway through a chapter before I realized that I had finished the one before. And that is true. But there were specific moments in the reading that I had to actually pause. Several times I had to pause because I noticed that my heart rate had picked up, and I was like, I was able to put myself in the novel, and I was running right along, not physically, but if you're a reader, then you understand what I'm saying. I was experiencing the clock ticking, the race for time, and as Robbie was running and executing these steps in his plan to free himself, along with all these other trapped souls. And there's other points to the freedom plan. There's, the plan for revenge, retribution, to balance the scales, justice. So all of this plays in. So as he's running, he's literally running for his life. At some point, we've got dogs chasing him. We've got people from the Reformatory. They're hot on his heels. And like periodically I had to stop and just kind of set my Kindle down, step away and go do something else, and remind myself this is a fictional story. But it was really like nerve-wracking. Of course, I was rooting for Robbie all the way, but the way that it's written, the way that Tananarive pins this story, at no point until it gets to the point, at no point in the progress of getting to the point can you definitively, as a reader, ensure that this is going to turn out for the good of everyone. You just left hanging. You've got to keep reading. As the tension mounts, you cannot at any point say, "Oh, this is going to turn out okay." You have no idea, and you're sitting on the edge of your seat. The cake's in the oven burning because you've forgotten about it, because you're so busy trying to see what in the hell is going to happen to Robbie. So that's what I experienced during this chunk of the novel. Like, it just kind of flowed one thing into another, and you literally had to tear your eyes away. But I had to tear my eyes away because I was on the edge of my seat, and it had me by the throat. And I was just really rooting for Robbie and for Gloria as well. But as the events were unfolding, I couldn't know how it was going to go at any given time. And that was nerve-wracking. So, yeah. Oh, part of the plan to facilitate the escape is to stage a fire. And that goes off as everyone plays their role, and that goes on. There's some secondary characters, some things going on. Not going to get into that because it doesn't take away for me to get into that. Would just kind of get me off track. but it doesn't take away from the meat of the novel for me to point out that it'll just be that much more satisfying for the reader to pick up on those little things that are going on in the background as we're keeping track of the escape. So I'll leave that for the reader to discover delightfully, who's doing what, where, when, why, and how as this plan is unfolding. Not necessarily the main key players in the plan, Robbie, Gloria, so on and so forth, but those background people, Warden Haddock, Boone, them damn dogs that they set out on Robbie's trail, and the people, controlling the dogs, some of the employees at the Reformatory. Everybody's busy doing things. But that's what I'm saying. I'll leave that up to the reader to discover exactly what they're doing in the background and how that, seamlessly plays into the main meat of it, this escape. Even though they're not, main players in that particular part of the story. So, all right. But the heels of the Reformatory do at some point come alive. Literally with the sound with the presence of these tortured and lost souls, lives lost there, cruelly stolen there. And Haddock does receive his just due. Thank God. So the ending for most everyone involved was satisfactory. I don't know that in some points of it, it was a happy part of the ending, and then there was a not so happy part of the ending. But even that wasn't like sad completely, just given everything that's happened. This is a good thing, but damn, everything that's happened though, kind of thing leading up to this. So, but again, Haddock does receive his just due. Thankfully, in the ending for everyone involved is satisfactory. Robbie does manage to escape by the hair on his chinny chin chin. And the way that everything kind of unfolds, we're given to understand that everyone who needs to be dealt with, either by the justice system or by just life in general, or by natural consequences or whatever, they either have been or will be dealt with. So, we can kind of settle ourselves with that. The anxiousness, the nervousness, the nerve-wracking settles knowing that, okay, everybody's going to get what they need to get. So yay, my rating for this novel, of course, is 5 out of 5, 5 stars out of 5, because it just was a great novel. I've been raving about it through all 4 episodes. Again, I'm not new to Tananarive Dude's writing. I've not read anything of hers that I have not thoroughly enjoyed. This is up there, though. My first choice, my first love, still and always probably will be My Soul to Keep. But the Reformatory is running neck and neck. I love the way that it was written. It's a page turner for sure. 5 stars out of 5 from me. I told you guys about how I had to pause between, every so often. So I did say that Warden Haddock got his just due, but I do want to point out that, and maybe this is just the dark side of me, but I would have loved for his justice to be just a little bit more publicly humiliating, given everything that he was up to there at the Reformatory. I would have loved for him to be more publicly humiliated, just because he so awesomely deserves that. And so, God forgive me, but that would have really been nice. So, also, if I had a critique, and maybe I do have one, I would have liked to know more about what the hell ever happened to Boone. Like, again, you're left knowing that everyone who needs to be dealt with will be dealt with. But I think Boone played such an active part of terrorizing those boys over such a long, extended period of time, and to such an extent that he deserved a little more shine in how he got his butt whipped there at the end in the novel. I think I would have liked to chew on what happened to him a little bit more, rather than being left to assume that he was going to get it, knowing, in the back of my mind he's going to get it, but I would have wanted a little bit more firsthand knowledge about it. Because Boone, if as much as Warden Haddock deserved what happened to him times 10,000, Boone, so does Boone, right? So I hope he gets dealt with. I would have liked to know a little bit more about how, when, where, and at whose hand. Because Boone was a mess. All right. And then finally, I hope as the novel wrapped up that everything worked out okay for Miss Lottie. We never did. I'm assuming, again, we get the impression that everything works out the way that it's supposed to in the end. But I had grown kind of fond of Miss Lottie, and fiery old lady, and I just hope that along with her son, maybe I think it was her nephew or whoever the men were who were helping to see about her. I can't call it right now off the top of my head, but they certainly helped, and they certainly do help her in the novel. And I think, I wish her well, and I hope she, is okay, particularly given how everything went down and Gloria and Robbie were able again to get away, but she chose to remain behind. And I just hope in remaining behind in Florida that she's okay. So again, I love the novel. 5 stars out of 5 stars. I am going to head over to Amazon to post a review. There are many, many venues, brick and mortar as well as online, and places to get, grab yourself a copy of this novel, as well as electronic formats. Grab yourself a copy of this novel, audiobook, Kindle, paper copy, hardback. So I'm not going to attempt to list all of the different places where this novel is available for sale, as well as don't forget our public libraries, support our libraries. But what I am going to do is list the author's website URL, Tananarive.com. Check her out, go to her website, and there at the website, you can learn more about Tananarive, more about the projects that she has in the works, certainly about previous novels, short stories, anthologies, film, and television products or projects that she's working on. You can find out the many different places that you can obtain a copy of the Reformatory for yourself, the many different formats in which you can obtain those copies. So I'm going to point you in her direction, www.tananarive.com. Grab yourself a copy, get to reading. If you have already finished reading the novel, as I have, please go over to Amazon or wherever you purchase the book from. If they offer an opportunity to leave a great review or whatever your review, please do so. Reviews help a lot. Also, I think that's it. Grab a copy of the book, leave a review. I'm going to do the same. I got my copy from Amazon, so I'm going to go head over to Amazon, leave a 5-star review for The Reformatory by Tananarive. Stay tuned. Check back often, February365.com. Keep up with what we've got going on. Find out what our next selection is going to be so you can join us here on YouTube to keep up with us, read along with us. Join us on February 365's Blackest Lit Book Club experience. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm Terra Little, author, educator, speaker. See you next time. Bye.